Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Black Boss Channel. I am Jeff Lightsey Jr. We're here with a great panel, a great topic, because we'll be discussing King Randall's interview with Brother Roland Martin. And here to help me out is Brother Dr. Charles Cole, Miss Zakia Sinclair Jabbar. I wasn't gonna mess it up like Doc messing it up, and Tony Lindsay. How are you all doing tonight? And thank you guys for joining me. So we will, like I said, we'll be talking about King Randall's interview with Roland Martin, and a lot of things that he said was very important, but it was the way that Roland kind of guided the interview that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so I'll start with Miss Zakia to start us off. What was your thoughts initially when you watched that interview between Roland Martin and King Randall?
Hey, peace, y'all. Good to be in the space with you. So I watched the entire interview today, and I felt like that young man, 21 years old, really held his own, and he seemed more mature in that interview than Roland Martin, who I'm sure is pushing 60 or over 60, right? I thought that Roland was doing a little too much, like for his followers and listeners. But it was interesting because I watched it on his YouTube channel, and I was looking at the comments on his YouTube channel, and people were disagreeing with him, like, you wrong. Like, yeah, they ate him up in the comments, so he thought he was doing all this, vote, vote, vote. And my whole thing is, I'm sick of the Black bourgeoisie pushing voting as the only legitimate issue that we should care about. And I felt that the young man, he spoke so eloquently to that. Like, why do I need to do that work? You doing it. There's other groups that are doing it. A lot of y'all, matter of fact, all the so-called civil rights organizations, that's all they do. As a matter of fact, nobody else except for our organization, as far as, and I don't think we're considered civil rights, but it's like Black people don't care about education. Roland kept pushing on him saying, you don't care about voting. You don't care about voting. After he literally said, Black boys are illiterate. How you gonna vote if you illiterate? Like, Roland didn't even make the connection. And that's what stood out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the thing. Like, he was saying, that's not my fight. That's what he kept saying. And I don't think there's a problem with saying that, right? Like, to say that that's not your fight, that you're in a different space. Like, everybody has their own space. And if he used the example of anatomy, right? Like how the body has different parts of the body that do different functions. And he said, you might be one part of the body and I'm a different part, but we're all fighting the same fight, but just I'm using a different space. Dr. Cole, I'm coming to you next. When it comes to that education key, like, I get it. Voter suppression is real. Like, we understand that's not something we're fighting. But when you watch that and you heard King Randall, a guy who, like Ms. Zakia said, is 21 years old and has founded a school, starting a school for young boys, just kind of tell me, what were your thoughts about him in that interview?
And not just founding a school, he's founding a private school, a boarding school for black boys. That's incredible. And I work in education, and I've, even on our A Black Hands podcast, where we talk about education, I'm the one on that group saying, look, I'll use whatever apparatus I need to educate Black boys. But my goal would be that we have more Black private schools so we can do what we need to do, how we need to do it, and not be limited to this whack, like state-led like curricula, right? So I thought that he was doing some amazing stuff. And look, I'm somebody who respects Roland's platform the same way I respect Boyce's platform. I stay out of that stuff. I know them both. Like, I've met them, you know what I mean? Like, but I do feel that when I'm listening to him, I felt like it was just wanting to win an argument as opposed to what this 21-year-old brother was saying. And we had such an opportunity to, like, really amplify that and get a lot of people behind him. And I think that the people that normally listen to Roland actually agreed, as Zakia pointed out earlier, was that, like, in the comments, those people were like, yo, like, I actually want to hear what this young man has to say. And I think that was an opportunity. This is, I think, part of the disconnect between generations. And I think some older people get it and some don't. I think that was a moment to mentor. I think there was a way, because he never disagreed with what Roland was saying. He just was saying, that's not my fight. And I think that as older people, all the elders in my life have always told me, Charles, pick your battles. Pick your battles. Don't stretch too thin, right? And I think that young man was really focused. And I got to give him even more kudos, because even the way he ended the interview, he was still like, I used to be a fan, but I want you to come speak to my young people and bring whatever you want to bring. Like, I respect you. I respect what you built. And I think that a place where a strong bridge could have been built, it may have potentially been burned down, but we should really listen to that young brother and see what help he needs, because I also don't know if he knows the full fight that he's about to be in and trying to educate Black boys the way that he wants to educate them. So I'm proud of him. I wish it would have went a little differently, but I can talk about that all day.
No, that's absolutely good. And we'll come back to you to talk more about that education point. Tony, I'm coming to you because I think from the jump, King Randall pointed out that him and Roland had a back and forth a little bit on Twitter, and it all stems, because I went and I had to do some research. I had to look it up. It all stems from him being conservative. It's like when Roland heard that word conservative, he heard Republican, and it just like set something off. Tony, what is it about being black and conservative, or having conservative values, that kind of ticks off some people in certain spaces?
I think it's the hyper partisanship that I always talk about. This notion that we always have to choose sides. And to be honest, I don't really have like any type of like dog in this fight when it comes to Roland Martin as a journalist or whatever. But personally, I think that was one of the most egregious examples of journalistic malpractice that I've ever seen. I thought that young man handled himself extremely well, even through all the disrespectful behavior of Roland Martin. That young man continued to call him Mr. Roland. He continued to defer to him and allow him to cut him off. I just thought that it was, honestly, I thought it was extremely cringeworthy. And as an elder, it's our job, as the old heads, to impart wisdom on young people. And what Roland Martin did was absolutely not that. He came off like an out of control preteen arguing with a parent. And in fact, if you looked at King, he appeared to be the only adult in the room. Like, if you looked at his response, his response, like, you ever been talking to, like, let's say an elder, like a really old person that may not understand politics or whatever it is, their brain is just pretty much mainstream media. So you can't really argue with them too much. You just kind of get that little smirk, like, all right, get it off your chest. Yeah, all right, get it. That's the way that I saw him engaging with Roland after a while, like, kind of like, damn, this dude is just lost. So I thought it was really irresponsible. I thought it was a bad example of how we, as an older generation, I'm Gen X, I'm the same age as Dr. Boyce. I thought it was a missed opportunity to reach out to the younger generation. And I thought it was also a very good display of why there's such a disconnect between Gen X's or boomers and Gen Zs and the millennials. I just think that it's so hard for these young people to respect us when they see things like this.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it speaks to, it has a lot to do with that, the disconnect. But I think, like, when it comes to that bipartisanship or that partisanship, you're fighting so hard for the Democrats or you're fighting so hard for Republicans, you get spats like this. Like Dr. Cole said, this should have been a time where Roland used his platform to uplift the X for Boys, which is the school, and I'll show its website here in a second. Right. It should have been a time like we should be celebrating, like, yo, because I think this guy had gained some traction and people knew who he was. It's not like he really gained a lot of speed after this interview, but it was all for the wrong reasons almost. It was because he was being attacked in the way he handled himself. Mr. Key, I want to come to you when I want to say, like, when you're a part of certain groups, I know, like, whether it's you're a part of the Nation of Islam, people look at you a certain way, or if you're considered a black conservative, people kind of look at you a certain way. Why, like, what is it about our people that kind of tends us to do that, right? Like, to kind of give ourselves labels, right? Like, a lot of times when you're a black conservative or black Republican, you're almost considered a coon from the jump, even no matter what comes out of your mouth. Kind of what does that come from, and how do we kind of get away from that?
Can I hop in just really quickly? I mean, because the young man was very clear that he wasn't Republican or Democrat, right? He just was like, everybody can kick rocks, right? If it's not about black people. So I want to say that first. I think too, I think a lot of us was raised to respect everybody. Like I had a Bible thumping granny whom I loved, and I saw Jesus in her, but I respected, like, I really respected the Muslims in my community in the way that they was on those corners, keeping us safe and pushing us forward. I think that we actually come from a people that's really respectful. And I think that that young man actually displayed that. And I think the part that's so confusing about the way I think that Roland kind of handled it, and I'm not going to dump on Roland, right? But, and I think Roland actually is in ed reform. Like I know him from actually that young man is kicking the stuff that Roland actually kicks and believes in, right? And so I was just surprised by how charged up he was on it. And again, I know it's easy to like kick somebody when they down, but I need his platform. I need Boyce to have a platform. We need that young man to have a platform. We need Zakiya to have a platform. We need to be, I want to see Black people in every single space. And I want to see Black people leading Democrats, even though they get on my nerves, Republicans, even though they get on my nerves, right? Through the whole spectrum. I want to see Black people there because I want to actually show up to a table that's a Black table where we actually may not agree on stuff, but we can argue towards a solution, right? So, I mean, I think that I don't want us to be painting Black people as like generally disrespectful because I think that young man was so respectful. And like I said, even the way he ended it. So I don't want to drone on. Hopefully that made sense. My granny taught me to be respectful.
Mm-hmm. I was taught to be respectful as well. I also grew up in the South. So I actually have noticed the difference in men. That young man reminded me of men that I know who are from the rural South. Very respectful, hardworking, and smart. Intelligent. Clearly that brother, 21, and that level of thinking, right? You know what I mean? He was clear about how the money go, like what we trying to do. He talked about, I was impressed. Whoever raised him, job well done. You know what I mean? He was raised well. Speaking of platforms, people can find me at Real Talk with ZSJ on YouTube. You were talking about my platform. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Real Talk Uncensored. But to your original question to me, Jeff, how do I say this? So Roland is of the Black sort of upper crust, if you will, of our community. And some of y'all might call that the boule. I don't know much about boule to even, get into that. But clearly, if it's not about like certain boxes that check you off to be a part of this Black elite club, which that young man's message, if we're honest, was more Nation of Islam. That's what I heard. Do for self.
He pointed that out. Who the first
told us to do for self? It was Elijah Muhammad. Like, stop going to these Republicans, Democrats, white folks, whoever, do for self. And there's so many people who get mad at that. And I gotta say it, but when you look around our communities, that attitude is the reason why we don't own the corner stores in our neighborhoods. It's the reason why we don't own the hair salons in our neighborhoods. It's the reason why, because we are taught to be dependent.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I just think my politics ain't really about that. I'm rocking with old boy. You know what I mean? I might not be rocking totally like with his politics, and if he's conservative and all of that. I have some, I guess, quote unquote, conservative views because number one, I believe in Black gun ownership. I'm not on all that gun control in a way that will restrict gun rights for Black folks. The other thing that comes to mind is that, the Black elite talk about voter disenfranchisement or felony disenfranchisement impacting voting. Guess what else felony disenfranchisement impacts? Your right to bear arms. So there's a lot of brothers who are catching more felonies if they're caught with a gun. In Ohio, it's called having a firearm under disability because you have a prior felony. Which one of these Black groups are trying to fight to get, get the felony disenfranchisement from up off the Second Amendment? So, I mean, I just think being independent and being a critical thinker is something that is wanting on the Roland Martin platform.
I think for a lot of, I just think for a lot of people, especially people in the community, Roland Martin represents more of an establishment point of view, Whereas people like this young man, they represent a community-based perspective. And that interview right there showcased the disconnect. And Roland Martin, no matter how much that young man tried to explain his point of view, he just continued to get reeled back in to a one-dimensional argument. It's like you can't do that. So, it makes me personally question the intentions of Roland Martin. That's me. That's my opinion. Because, we talk about the Boule class, the gatekeepers. In that interview that I saw right there, Roland Martin was acting as a gatekeeper. And to have a young man, a guy so young, so intelligent, so driven on your show, and for you not to speak not even the slightest degree of empowerment to that young man, for you not to offer any type of humble advice. I mean, remember, you don't have to agree with the young brother, but you can still say to this guy, hey, you know what? I like the way you think. I'm impressed with what you're doing. But how about this? Did you also consider maybe this approach as well? Because I saw that young man was very receptive to alternate perspectives. So as a journalist, Roland Martin has that responsibility. The onus is on Roland to be fair and impartial, not King Randall.
I think that whole journalistic fair and impartial been out the window.
Doesn't even exist anyway.
It don't even exist no more.
When advertisement started, that left. You know what I'm saying? When you needed ad revenue. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, less about even what Roland. I want to even focus more on the positive, what this young man was trying to do, right? Because, my whole thing is agency. My love language is agency. My love language is making sure Black kids know what quality is and knowing how to get it and knowing how to not be as dependent on these other systems that don't care about us. And I think that at some point you get tired of begging systems to love you. I used to work in the Democratic Party. I actually know that playbook. And I think that part of it was also like, I want to, and I'm not, I learned a lot when I was doing it, but I'm like, when do we get to ask for something? Because what they end up doing is we get too happy with platitudes and parades. But when Biden got elected, like the pen didn't swipe for us, it swiped for other groups. You know what I mean? And I think that you can't be okay with just platitudes. And I think what that young man was saying is like, look, y'all do whatever you want to go do. If you want to go do that, I love it, right? But I'm going to teach these young people to be self-sufficient. I'm going to teach them to know who they are. And I'm going to teach them to have some courage and build some wisdom around themselves. And I think that's something that's very difficult to get in traditional public schools. And when you go to traditional public schools, you got to understand how this system works. In order for this system to actually work, you need a surf class. Right? That you have to ask the reason, why don't they teach us how to make money? Why don't people teach you about entrepreneurship? Why don't they, like, the face of money is changing, right? Mm-hmm. There should be a class right now in every Black community that's talking about what the future of money and finance is going to look like. But what traditional public schools do is you need a surf class so they can be a ruling class, right? Like you need people to have those menial jobs. So if we got more Black people to build private schools where they're not at the whim of the state, they're not at the whim of white folks that don't like what you're doing, and you actually get to move independent, you know what I'm saying? You get self-sufficient folks the same way Panther babies are self-sufficient. You know what I mean? And I think that, so what this young man is doing at 21 years old, he's going to need some help. And so if we can, I would love to actually put his information up so we can just like go and support that brother. And again, and I would love to have a closed door conversation with Roland about it and really get underneath what that was about. But again, this conversation ain't about Roland and about that piece. I'd rather us lift up the amazing thing that this brother's doing for his community. And again, there's so much danger involved in educating Black folks, especially young Black boys and young Black men and young Black women, to understand and know who they are and start to get into their power. And so he got a lot of stuff coming, and he gonna need his full community behind him. And so I'm with it, man. And I would love to talk to that young man.
Me too. I reached out to him actually on Twitter because I want to bring him on Building Power. Mm-hmm. That's the website for his school. I actually do think that Roland Martin, his behavior should be interrogated. It's not about throwing him under the bus or targeting him, right? But what he did was very harmful. Thankfully, people saw through it. He could have harmed that brother getting support and love from our community by trying to paint him as some conservative that need to be. That's what he was doing. Let's just be honest. It was like it was attack mode, because that's what you see on CNN and MSNBC. If anybody is labeled a certain kind of thing, it's like full on attack instead of actually engaging ideas. What I appreciated about what the brother said is, I'm independent. I don't want no white Republican money, and I don't want no white Democrat money. I'm about being independent. And I think that we should be doing for self. And in the spirit of doing for self, Roland should have instructed, just like Dr. Cole just did, should have instructed his followers to go and support him.
I was actually going to highlight that.
Yeah.
The fact that, see, the way that Dr. Cole just spoke, the way that he just handled this exact conversation, in my belief, is the way that Roland should have handled it. And I know, I know, Dr. Cole, you don't really want to make it about Roland, and I get that.
That's all good, brother. Go where you go, brother. It's all good. It's all love.
Right. Because I'm from Brooklyn. You know what I mean? Not to say it's different from anybody else, but if I see it a certain way, I'm gonna say it the way that it is. You know what I'm saying? And I think that even though it is very important that we have this myriad of views, these diverse perspectives, we need that in the Black community. But I also think that we have a responsibility to call people out when their slip is hanging. We have a responsibility to hold people accountable when they do things that can harm the mission. And this young man exemplifies the mission. This is literally the mission of what we need as Black people. So, even in the advertisement of that YouTube video, if you look at the way that he's promoting it, it's Roland against young conservative.
Yeah, he didn't put his name in there. He didn't put his name in there.
Name that young man's name. You just call him young conservative. I mean, you brought him on the show. The first thing you said,
he brought him on there to attack.
The first thing you bring him on, you talking about voting and this, that, and the other, even though that's not what that young man is there for. The young man pointed out to Roland twice in that interview. You called me an idiot, sir. Did Roland apologize? No, he didn't. So that's inexcusable to me, especially as a person who advocates for our youth, our young people, especially when it comes to getting them involved in the political process. That young man even stated that although, and this is the last thing I'll probably say about this, you see, it's one thing when you express your point of view, but it's another thing when you conflate what someone else is saying. That young man continued to express that he just does not want the Black community to develop an over dependency on government. But Roland continued to frame it. Oh, so you need government. So what are you going to do? So no government, no government. So then don't you think you get funding from this? So how can you exist? Bruh, come on, bruh. You know what he was saying. You know what I'm saying? And all that does, that's professional time wasting. And I don't think that was the time or the place to do that at the expense of a young Black brother who's out here doing the work on the ground.
No, absolutely. You're correct about that, because that was one thing I took away from it. It was like, you need government to get a driver's license. You need government to get building permits. It's like, Roland, we understand that, right? Like we're not saying you don't need government for anything. Obviously, if you have a business, you have to go through your city or your state or whatever to get certain licenses or building codes and all this stuff. Like, so obviously you need government in some aspect. But the main message, like Mrs. Zakia pointed out, was do for self. And that's one thing I want to get back to. But once again, this is the Black Boss Channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. We're talking about the interview between Roland Martin and King Randall. And so, Mr. Key, I want to come back to you because you touched on it a little bit, but I want you to dive in a little deeper about the whole do for self. King Randall was very, very adamant about not having to always wait for the government to give you handouts or to provide for you and your family. And that's why he's teaching his kids to be able to use their hands and to be able to build things and the things like that. How important is that for our community to start to get a mindset more along those lines and less along the government assistant lines?
That's extremely important. I have been on this platform with you guys, with boys several times, and I have brought up and like Dr. Cole brought up earlier, how this economy is shifting. It's now or never. I'm not being hyperbolical. Like, anybody that is studying the finances, anybody who is studying how money moves, Wall Street, the Wall Street market makers. Like if you're studying these people, right? I'm talking about people like Michael Saylor, right? Some people probably even know who that is, but he's a hedge fund manager. I'm talking about people like that. When you look at like how digital currency is becoming a thing, we are completely behind the curve. And I'm very concerned about our community. I think that the way this young man has positioned himself, he has the right mindset. I like the fact that he's focusing on vocational skills. He reminds me a little bit of Booker T. Washington with that, right? Remember the whole debate back between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois? Mm-hmm. You know, this idea of using your hands, you know, for work or using it, but he can do both. Clearly, he's about that, right? This young man is a businessman. Look at his website. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is a marketing genius. Clearly, he has mentors, right? We know he has mentors.
He does,
but he's doing his thing, and I absolutely support him, despite whatever his politics are. We got to get, as Black people, we got to get out of this canceling our people because they identify as Republican. Y'all need to be canceling some of these people still voting for these Democrats. And if you live in a Democratic city like I have and still do, I live in a Democratic state now, and you look around at Black communities, nah. How you just gonna be mad at Republicans? You need to be mad at yourself. That's why it's about doing for self. That's why, oh, I love this, right? This is amazing. That whole, I mean, clearly, even in a new economy, those are some of the jobs that will be some of the last that technology can take over. There's just some jobs automation is not going to be able to do, right? There's some jobs that AI is not going to be able to do. And so it looks like that's what he's focusing on. And I agree with Dr. Cole that he's going to continue to need mentorship and help, but from people who genuinely want to help him for the sake of seeing us win as a group and as a community, not to ride his wave up because the brother going places, you feel me? But to support him in what he's doing. I'm happy and I'm surprised. Hold on, I got to say this, y'all. I'm surprised ain't nobody brought up Dr. Umar yet.
I was about to, because I'm like, listen, this young man is doing.
He's 21 years old. Dr.
Been doing
Umar
for like 6 years.
My man did it in one shot.
Man, but I think part of the reason why, but I think the reason why this young man y'all brought it up is able to make these moves is that he's getting help, right? He's not trying to he's the face of this.
He's got some great mentors for sure,
but he's definitely humble from somewhere.
Remember,
he's humble.
Exactly.
He mastered that interview. I don't care what nobody says. Somebody prepped him for that interview. Like, Roland gonna do this to you. And he was ready. Like he didn't raise his voice.
He actually said he was ready for it and he expected it. And I actually thought it was kind of smart because at the end of the day, no matter what the intentions were behind Roland having him on the show, all it did was elevate that young man's platform so more people could see him and, help him, support him. So at the end of the day, Roland ended up helping the young man anyway, right? So, we just kind of talked to Roland like, yo, just kind of chill out next time. You know what I mean? And then
but the thing about it, Tony, that spoke to me was, the young man said multiple times, like, I looked up to you. Like I look like, and I think that was the part that was kind of heartbreaking because we actually do have an issue with bridging certain generations. And regardless of how people feel, like, again, I root for Black people. And I think that Jeff and I don't know each other super well, but we've interacted a few times. Like, yo, man, I would like for you to be here. Let me clear some stuff to be there. Like, I know Zakiya, we're getting to know each other a little bit better, but we ain't actually ever. It's funny because everything's all online. It feels like we know each other, but I need her to know that if we're in a certain situation, I fight for her, man, like actually physically fight. I think that if we really gonna get advanced as a people, right, we don't have to agree on everything. You could have actually respectfully disagreed with that young man and pushed him or whatever the case is, but it's enough against us that these white folks don't even come on their own no more, right? They send us.
Talk about it.
That's the part that's tough. And I think that it's as somebody, and and I know I might get flamed in your comments, but I respect Roland's platform, what he's built for himself. And I know he wants to be back on CNN and all that good stuff, but I respect what he's built the same way I respect what Boyce has built. They ain't got to be best friends for me to respect both of them. Like the same thing that happened with the Tamika Mallory situation with Tamir Rice's mother, right? Like,
yeah,
I can appreciate what Tamika Mallory has done while also being empathetic to what Tamir Rice's mother has said about BLM and these leaders building their celebrity off the backs of their children. I don't think Tamika did that, but if I said that, but I'll be lying to you if I said other black leaders didn't do that. It's a bunch of black leaders. Like when you go to the BLM website, I believe in the movement, but the organization, they have erased black men from that talk when it's like you built that off the deaths of black men and have changed the mission, right? So multiple things can be true at once. We are not that dense as a people. We can walk and chew gum. We are smarter than that, right? And like when you have that type of brilliance in front of you, you nurture it, you protect it, because that young man is pure at heart. And I'm telling you, he does not know what's around the corner for him, though. And it's like when he could have got cover, if he was getting cover from Boyce and he was getting cover from Roland and these other people and some of our sisters or whatever, who knows what he could do? Maybe this is the national motto, because I've been talking about private schools for black people for a long time. And listen, Dr. Umar has been trying to get a school going for a minute. This young man got it going at Dub 1, and I ain't got no beef with Dr. Umar. Do your thing too, brother. Right. My thing is that we are like pit bulls as a society of black people right now, that every time we pass each other on the street, we got to show our teeth. And it's like, man, don't you know that there's a leash on these collars? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we ain't doing nothing but entertaining these people. So that's how I feel about it. Let me stop because I start ranting and stuff, man.
No, I hear you, bro. But I just want to say something, man. But I also want to say something too, though. I don't want us to conflate rightful criticism as dogpiling or you know.
Oh, I'm not at all.
No, I'm not saying you are, brother. I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying that sometimes when we're holding certain people accountable, people who are in certain positions of influence, a lot of people tend to, you know, run with the narrative that we're trying to tear them down and we're trying to disrespect them and things of that nature. So I would like that message to be clear, that you can support Roland Martin. You can support Dr. Boyce. You can support Candace Owens. You can support whoever you want to support. But if they get out of pocket and they do something that you absolutely see is wrong, we have a responsibility to hold them to account, and they are not exempt because white people, you know, like to see black folks fighting. Yeah, we get that. We know that the dominant society, they thrive upon black dysfunction, but it still should not put us in a position where we exempt our own from rightful criticism.
Absolutely. And the thing is,
somebody in the comments said Roland hates alpha males.
Let me shut up.
I'm sorry.
But one thing I will say, though, is that like how you do anything, you don't do anything just one way, right? Like if you have a doctorate, right? Like Dr. Cole has a doctorate, right? His experience getting a doctorate is totally different than someone else's experience, right? But at the end of the day, they both got a doctorate, whether it's in, you know, education or whatever. But like there's more than one way to do something. And so you can be supportive of multiple people at once. You don't have to. But that was the thing that bothered me the most about the interview, was that the fact that, yeah, Roland was like simply attacking this man and didn't really allow him to express and talk about the school. Like the biggest thing that he's doing is that he started when he was 19 years old, having kids in his house, right? That should have been the topic. Voter suppression, we understand that is an issue, not just in Georgia, but in other places across the country. We get it. There's certain things that they're doing to particularly prohibit our people. Like that is, I'm not going.
And he agreed with that. Did y'all notice
exactly.
that? He was like, I agree. That's wrong. That's
exactly
wrong. He said, but what you want me to do? I'm doing this over here. He said, you doing a good job talking about that, right? He was like, there's other people in our state. They're fighting. He was, but my thing, I think what frustrated me is because I do this work every day with Dr. Cole and so many others. Chris Stewart, as you know, is also part of our group here. We are fighting to get black media to care about black education and what's happening with our black children. Mm-hmm. And that's what frustrated me about Roland, is because I know like he has a history, right, in education, but you know, these are not Dr. Cole's words, these are mine, but it's almost like if he was in it for a check and wasn't really in it from the heart. Because my thing is, to me, if you can't connect the fact that black children are illiterate and you want them to go to the voting polls, no. The other thing that frustrated me is that voting is not the only part of the political process. Black people need to be up and down the political process. We need to be on the committees that nominate the candidate. We need to be the deciding factor on who the damn candidate is going to be in the first place.
The young man said that he wanted to prime candidates to get involved in the political process.
Exactly. But Roland only wants to focus on voting, and that's why I can't with him and other people like him, because we are in 2021. Okay. Voting is not the end all be all. I'm sorry, y'all. It's just not. It's not. Because how did, okay, I ain't gonna make no comparisons because people gonna get mad, but there's so many other communities. There's so many other communities that have lower voting records than we do. And they're in an economically stronger position than we are. Make it make sense.
Yeah. Well, it's because we're not valued, man, and we don't value ourselves. I mean, listen, but Black people gave Ice Cube hell for asking for something.
Oh,
asking for something.
Not regular Black people. It was the Rolands of the world.
Thank you.
It was the Rolands. So I'm sorry, he do need some smoke.
Thank you. But that's what I'm saying, all right. It's like that man asked for something. He was all kind of sellouts and this, that, and the third, and you didn't get nothing but a parade.
But the community supported the community supported Cube. If you looked at the comments, right, people was with Cube.
Well, my thing is, and I say this on our show a lot, like, stop looking at these systems for love. Like, stop, get a girlfriend if you need love. Right. Get a husband. Like, look for these systems to do what they're supposed to do and put your foot on their neck. You know what I'm saying? And then build people that can operate and become powerful to make that system move the way that they need to. So that brother is building Trojan horses that can go in and have a plan and execute it. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Like, and I'll give you, and you said something about my doctorate. I'll tell you exactly what happened. I wrote my doctorate to Black people. I wrote it to, and I had to fight the university. They said, you got to write this to the academy. I said, I don't care about the academy. But I had a good Black chair that rocked with me and said, just do your class. I got this. And every time we got a chapter approved, I took it to a group of Black moms. And whatever they didn't understand or what didn't make sense, we either changed it or we took it out. Because you got to understand, if you're going to be on your square, who are you here for? Who are you trying to serve? And if you don't know who you're trying to serve, if you're trying to get back into a system that shuns you, and you're trying to show that you can bring the smoke and bring the heat, you know what I'm saying? Then you were going to end up working for other people and working against some brilliance that was in front of you that could have helped pick up your mantle. Because it's the thing that people don't know about Roland. Roland is a reform person like me. Like, we actually talk about alternative schools. You know what I mean? And I think that young man and that type of energy, that's the energy you rally behind. That's the energy that carries on what you already built. You know what I'm saying? As you get tired and leery and young people don't want to listen to you, but then you're going to be upset and say, don't nobody listen to me. And this is why. That dude wasn't disrespectful. That dude appreciated your legacy. And all you did was try to sun him in a moment, and you made yourself look bad.
And I tell you what, Roland, let me tell you what Roland is afraid of, and it's sick. It's sad to me.
I know what you're going to say.
He is afraid that this intelligent, smart young brother is not tied to the Democratic Party machine and will actually influence Black people from getting off the Democratic plantation. That's what I saw. He is worried that this brother has some legitimacy. That's the only thing that can explain him as a reform person, I'm using air quotes, for him not really leaning in to talk about the school. He kept wanting to focus on, you're a conservative. He brought it up so many times, you're a Republican, you're a conservative. And the brother had to tell him at least 3 times, I am not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm independent. I have conservative values, but I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. That should be okay.
I think that young man basically took Roland off his script. That's basically what it was.
Facts.
He didn't play the game. He took him off the script. And I think it was slightly intimidating because that young man did make some very good points. And Roland Martin is a very smart guy. I'm pretty sure he knows that he was getting getting owned on his own show.
Oh, he definitely got owned,
which made him more hostile.
You need to take that off his YouTube channel.
And even when you think about it, listen, we may not always support certain people or like, even honestly, it was reminiscent of the interview that he did with Dr. Umar. You know what I'm saying? where I felt like
and Dr. Umar wiped him up
destroyed
too.
that whole panel. And I think that the way that they approached Umar was extremely hostile. So, I mean, bro, that's not, in my view, that's not the way that, that's not the proper approach to journalism and or support for the Black community. So, I know people got their opinions about Roland. Say he's a nice guy, this and that, his intentions. I don't know. I'm just saying that where there's smoke, there's fire. And what I saw, that didn't really look like the best of intentions. But hey, I'm not going to put all my judgment based off of three interviews. I'm just saying, to each his own, bro.
Listen, man. It ain't just about test scores, right? It ain't just about like this young man posturing to build a school. It's that we know what the results are when those scores come back low. Our people die. Like I have buried five. I have had 5 deaths in 4 weeks in between Chicago and Oakland. You know what I'm saying? And I know as a kid, you've seen some of that stuff. Like. The work that man's trying to do is to save lives, man. Like we become fodder, not just for jails, but for violence. And like people don't understand this about this, this virus too, right? Like this is why people need to get back to work, because a lot of people didn't grow up in 90s era Oakland or 90s era Chicago or Detroit. Like this is when masks come out. This is when people get hungry. This is when you get robbed. This is when jackboys happen. And then like, well, we are delinquent in our communities. And it's like, nah, man, that's why this man is trying to build actual schools, like a tool for us to steal education, but not their education. It's the right kind of education. And like, this is why I just really want to support that man. And listen, man, I try not to look at comments and stuff because y'all comments be going crazy over here, man.
Don't look at them.
I know the comments are hilarious.
I know what my role is, right? My role as somebody who lived in 4 shelters and went to 11 elementary schools with 2 crackhead parents and like friends that really got it in. Like one of my best friends being murdered between 8th and 9th grade. I know why I'm here. Like I know what my role is in this thing. You know what I'm saying? And it ain't really even something that I want to do, but it's to make sure as many Black kids, as many Black people as possible get what they deserve on this academic level. Because again, they're about to shift money. And we're going to be the last ones if we're not doing the things that we need to do. And if we keep trying to play with these traditional school systems that don't care about you, we the only people that send our kids to enemies every single day. Your traditional school, school system is a rest haven for white women. Is 80%. You know what I'm saying? That don't care nothing about your kids. And when you say, yo, I want to make sure you're doing a good job, they strike. When you say, I just want to make sure my kids are learning, they strike. You know what I'm saying? They keep moving the goalposts. And I'll tell you this, if the teaching force was 80% Black, mostly women, and we had all them white kids and the results were what they were, they would have burnt it and blown it up multiple times, man.
And arrested half of them.
I applaud this young man.
Yep. Absolutely. I applaud him. I support him. And I encourage everybody on here to support him. Period.
That's right. The foundation of Black liberation is education, because until we know who we are, until we truly learn how this system functions, we're not going to have the capability or the understanding to do what we need to do to get out of it and function independently.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, we're talking to our Black panel about the Roland Martin and King Randall interview, and I'm gonna be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, I want to come back to you, Dr. Cole, on this. What we see from King Randall in this style of school, this style of reform, you kind of touched on it just a second ago. But is this something, because one school won't change the trajectory, right? One school will do a lot of work for young Black men in the city of Albany. But what kind of, I don't know, we don't know the ins and outs and every detail of this individual school, but we know the foundation. We know its purpose. We know what it's supposed to do. What can schools like this, like the X for Boys, do in cities across this country for Black men all across America?
Yeah, the only thing I push back on is I think one school can change a lot. It's gonna change. It can change generations, right? But I get your point. I think that schools like this, one, to teach you to love yourself. Like the toughest part of my job, dealing with white folks and systems is tough. But the hardest part of my job, where I spend so much time, is convincing Black people that they deserve better. Convincing them that you ain't got to fight for these crumbs that they've been given to you. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I think that that's the first thing, man. Is I said this earlier. We keep searching for love in these systems and these racist ass like systems and asking them to love us. But that only happens when you don't love yourself. I don't care if the stop sign loves me. I just need it to turn green and red when it's supposed to. That's it. You know what I'm saying? It got a job to do. And I think that you got to keep your foot on the necks of these systems. I think that's one. I think two, we got to start, these schools help you see value in your people. Like, we always believe that white ice is colder. We always believe it. You know what I'm saying? Like Master P said this and people jumped on him. He said, if Clubhouse would have been started by a black man with all the same stuff, it wouldn't have been supported. But when a white person started it, we done blew that thing up to a multi-billion-dollar like piece, and people got mad at him. But the point that he was making was, we inherently don't trust black people. We inherently don't trust our own. We inherently don't trust our schools. And then I think the third thing is that you also have to be able to see black people make mistakes, because what will happen is you'll get black people in power and then they got to be perfect. I'm in a space where I might get funding or whatever, and I make sure I over deliver every single time. And I know other people that have just got money and not done nothing. You know what I'm saying? But they take risk. And and so when you feel like you got to always be perfect, you stifle black brilliance because they're afraid to take risks, because they're not just worried about failing for themselves, but they worried about no black people behind them being able to get that opportunity again. So that's what black institutions will do for us and our people. And I just think that, if we just keeping it all the way real with that, man, I swear to God, I love y'all crowd. I got to stop looking because I love the way that they comments be coming, man. I get distracted, but I would just go with those three things. I think, and the last thing as a bonus is, this curriculum is stale as hell. I go to schools all across the country, and kids are asking, can you teach me about investment? Can you teach me about money? Can you teach me how to take care of myself? Can you teach me how to take care of a house? Can you teach me about taxes? Listen, it's so many people. Like, when raise your hand if you struggle with taxes when the first time that you had to fill that stuff out. If everybody in the country got to do it, why don't we all know how to do it, right? Like, why, you know what I'm saying? Because that's why poor black people end up paying more in taxes than these rich corporations, because they hand that stuff down from their kids and be like, we're going to write all this off. We're going to write the air off if we got to. So I would stop there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that is great, because I think it goes back to something you had said earlier. It's about, like, you have to have, the only way a capitalistic society works is if somebody's in the working class, right? So if everybody is put up on game, especially our people, because our people have been what's considered the lower class, the working class for so long. If everybody's put up on game, and now you have all these black entrepreneurs, these black educators, these black schools, then where's your working class coming from? Like somebody else,
man. You need a dummy. You know
what I mean? So like that is the reason why you're not taught these things. That's what the reason why you're taught to go to school, do good in school, go to college, and get a job, and not go to school,
be a nice good
business
worker,
owner, not to educate yourself to be self-sufficient, not to do for yourself and things like that. And I've kept you guys for a long time, so we'll wrap this thing up here. And Ms. Zakiya, if you just give your final thoughts on what's taking place with everything, and any final words that you have, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Jeff. This is a good discussion, and just encourage people to continue to, be critical thinkers, right? You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Real Talk with ZSJ. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Real Talk Uncensored. But one final comment in terms of the finance piece. Dr. Cole, I am not surprised that young people are asking about the questions that they're asking. And I think in this last year, I myself have been asking those questions and have become what's called a retail investor, where you use TD Ameritrade app and you invest. And if I may, there are some Black folks out there that I listen to. In fact, I'm missing one of the shows right now because it airs on 8 o'clock on Mondays, but it's two brothers actually out of New York, Tony. They run a channel called Earn Your Leisure. If you've never heard of them.
Good brothers, yeah.
Love those brothers. And they give not just income taxes, they doing it all. They talk about mortgage. They talk about credit. I mean, everything. So listen, those are the kind of conversations that we should be having, in my opinion. And the other one is the Come Up Cousins. It's a brother and a sister. The brother is a graduate of Tuskegee University. He is just about a self-made millionaire, multi-millionaire off of the options game. For people who know understand investing, he, made his money off of options, and he is teaching that to his listeners. So listen, those are two resources. I'm a sister that's all about resources. I don't be trying to hoard information. Whatever's helping me, I'm gonna put it out there, even if it's increasing their YouTube views, because it's about legitimate information. I would never recommend anybody that's not legitimate, but those two I can vouch for as legitimate sources for where you can get information that Dr. Cole was talking about. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Zakia. Tony Lindsay, any final thoughts? The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's really important. Like if we leave here with anything, I think one thing that we should definitely leave here is the mindset of knowing that we should really support our younger people, our younger generation who decides to get engaged politically and in, their communities. And I was going to mention it earlier, but I went to that young man's page. I think it was his Facebook page, King Randall, and he did a live video after the Roland Martin interview. And, I was just sitting there listening to him, and just to hear the things he was saying, like it was discouraging, honestly, to me, but it confirmed what I've always said, that we really need to do a better job at reaching out to our youth, because the things that he's expressing, he's like, listen, I really respected that guy. And, this is why it's so hard for us as a younger generation to deal with these old heads, because they're always talking down to us. They use their education more so as a weapon against us and their platforms. So, that disconnect is real. And I think that as a generation, because Roland, I think maybe Roland's like in his 50s or something like that. I mean, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my late 40s, but, we're from that generation that I believe is responsible for leaving these young people behind based on our, let's say, less educated participation in the political process. So a lot of these kids, they've pretty much been kind of abandoned, left behind. So I just think we need to take on more of a responsibility to get behind these young people and support them and offer them guidance where needed without the vitriol and the condescension.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Tony. And Dr. Cole, last but not least, your final thoughts on everything.
Well, don't forget yourself, brother. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'll have some wrap it up statements, but yeah,
Jeff, I think you did a great job, and I'm here to support you any way I can. Tony, I look forward to getting to know you better. And Zakia, I mean it, man. I would really throw hands for you. I really just love you, man. I just think that you just super dope, and the way you stand up for Black folks, especially Black men, is beautiful. I'll just leave you with this, right? You should read a book called The Education of Blacks in the South. If you want to know how everybody got free public education, the biggest time in which Black people learned how to read was directly after slavery, when they ain't had no money. They just had a little bit of dignity. And the white Southern planters, they said, we don't want them to have no kind of education. And they said this early on, if these Black people start learning how to read, they won't be fit to do this work. And we have to go overseas and get this. This is why we have that type of system now. And the Northern philanthropists, just so you know, they wasn't all just super progressive. They said, we want to give them education, but we want them to learn what we want them to learn. And then what happened was that we started building our schools. These Black people that had no wealth scraped all together with these Black churches, and they built these schools. And then these white people in the South got jealous. And you know what they did? They took all of it. They took it all. Mm-hmm. And then they changed the curriculum. All I'm saying is, if you know your history and you know what we built and you know how we did it, there's no way we would push that young brother away. And what I think it is, and I don't think we interrogate, I know I got to close here. I think that brother that pushed on that young man was afraid of being erased. I think he was afraid of his spot being taken. I think he felt he didn't feel his own worth and his own value, which I can empathize and sympathize with that if we needed to, if that was the conversation for another day. But the point is that we got to do this together, and we got to bring up people behind us, and we got to support those people in front of us. So, Jeff, you did an amazing job. And
yes, you did, brother.
And crowd and comments, God bless y'all. I swear to God, I love y'all. I can't wait to read every
I gotta go and read them now.
I can't wait. They are so entertaining. I just want to show some love to the crowd. Even the folks that disagree with us, like,
oh Lord,
I just love Black people just being Black people, and it just feels like I'm at home, like I'm at a cookout. And right now with this Rona stuff, we can't be at one. This is the closest thing. So thank y'all for making me feel my granny's love, who's been dead for a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I just let you all. I just try to stay out of the way, right? Like when we're having engaging conversations and people are bringing great points. There's no point of me like asking a bunch of questions or trying to talk or do a whole bunch of like facilitating. Just allow the conversation to flow naturally, and that's what we did. And I just want to wrap up by saying this. Thank you all for joining me for sure. This was amazing to have these, you know, because we wasn't being attackful. You just really call into question what took place, right? This is a young man who is bought and funded a school, who was taking in donations, who was looking for more donations because every single student at this school, at this private school, gets an education for free. He started this project 2 short years ago, and in 2 years, he has been able to purchase a school, and he's been able to purchase a school bus that fits, I think, fits up to like 60 students, right? So he's doing amazing things in his community in Albany, and what he's doing is going to spark the minds or spark other folks to do likewise, right? People are going to see King Randall at 21, and it doesn't matter what age you are. Even if you're a kid that's like maybe 10 years old right now, it's like, dang, I can do that. I can do better for my community and be able to spark that mind and spark those donations and spark those people to actually do the same thing in their community. What he's doing in Albany, Georgia is something that can be duplicated across this country. And I think that impact will be forever lasting through our community. The problem with our community a lot of times is the wealth gap and the education disparity. And if those things can be shored up by something as being educated and self-sufficient, is a beautiful thing. So that's what I'm really proud of. Once again, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to our beautiful panelists for their great insight and their smart thoughts. Give them a digital round of applause and hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Share this video so people can hear our conversation, and we will see you guys next time.